All right, here's second tutorial on cross-contour drawing. So this is where I left off. Well, I actually worked on the Ninja in between tutorials a little bit. So you can see I add a lot more detail. I mean, essentially here, the cross-contour aspect, you're basically adding a lot more lines to define the forms as much as possible. And spend a good 30, 45 minutes on this. I definitely was a little bit shorter on that end just because I have a little more experience and also just for the fact that for time constraints and stuff. But I'm still adding a few lines here. I'm just noticing any lines that are a little bit lighter or not. I'm sorry, not quite right. Like darken them. Like add the better line, like at the bottom leg here. Like I'm looking at this. Like I use the side of the marker or pencil or whatever I'm using to make that line just a bit thicker. So I don't have to erase this part here, this part, and I can just basically leave those lines there and just make the darker, heavier line. So again, it's been about 30 to 45 minutes for each of these figures, and you could go definitely a little bit longer if you like, but at least 30 to 45. So right now I'm just kind of going in and laying in, maybe some heavier lines to kind of pull out certain areas, give a little more contrast, but essentially, I like most parts for the contours, the cross contours. There's areas here where I could go a little bit lighter, maybe add a few more lines there, like in this forearm here. And I'm noticing this arm here needs to kind of go up a little bit. Need some bigger bumps, I think, right here. And I'm not sure about that line. Maybe it is a little bit lower. So at this part, I could switch to my eraser tool if I really want to. Usually the eraser tool, if it gets too confusing, with the lines, I can spend a little bit of time erasing. But typically, you want to show the history of your drawing, and that's really important. So allow those lines to kind of show through. And I have a few diagonal lines to show some shading there. So let's go a little bit more deep with a couple examples here. What I've done here is I've added a group and I added some red lines here to kind of demo areas where you can have contours in the natural aspect of the actual drawing. And I'm going to point those out using maybe a blue of some sort, just so it's easier to see on its own layer here to demo that. Make the brush size a little bit bigger. So this is just to point out certain areas. I'm going to undo these, but if you look at, for example, right here and here, these areas you can see natural contours. And if I turn off the red group, you can kind of see underneath there is a line there of sort of the arm which meets that connects to the body. And there's some other areas, that are really cool. The clothing here, there's a cool like connection points here in the wrist and the wrist here. So that would correspond here. And again, the loops and the direction of the knee here and the direction of the knee here. You can kind of see all that going on there, and that kind of all falls through pretty well. So those are the kind of aspects I'm talking about in terms of the cross contour to pay attention to. Any area where you have a connecting point. So for example, in the bottom leg here, you can see this line kind of loops around and connects where you see the bone. So you can have that, and that's what I have here. And then just noticing the direction of these contours. It makes sense that they would go this way because the leg's kind of pushing forward. Just go the other direction and you can kind of see how weird that would look. Going that way, it doesn't quite make sense. So you'll see that, you should be able to see that after a while. Like this one's a little trickier to see. Those look definitely good that way. If I undo those, going that way, let's go the other direction. You can see this one also works good this way. So with this one, you got a directional point where actually this way would make sense on the drawing, and that would be fine. So those cross contours, again, these are more arbitrary contours. You can have just a few of them instead of a bunch to kind of demonstrate, the form. But I think having a bunch is okay too in this particular example. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, we'll get rid of this group for a second and turn on the other group. And I'm going to turn off and add another new layer here. And demo here again, I have with this woman, again, some other red lines where this happened. Notice here in the leg, it's definitely the wrong direction. I actually wrote that down in the correct direction here. So I did this on purpose, but if I wanted to make this really stand out and make sense in terms of the contours, like literally draw them that direction. Now these lines going across this way make sense, so those are fine. And then in terms of the arm here, I didn't finish, but like I would probably add a few contours here, cross contours. They'd cross over. And they become a cylinder shape here. You can kind of see that. So if you think about the figure in terms of simplification of simple forms like a cylinder or a cube, I tend to look at it more in cylinders. That's where the cross contour can look really good. So for like the bottom leg here, if you look at it as a cylinder, right? Look at it as a cylinder here. So as it's going across here, I think it would kind of go in like that, even though on this side it started this way. This is where it happens. You get a straight line point here, and then as it curves around here, you got more of these contours that cross over. Now sometimes it's very helpful to draw directly on the photo like I'm doing here, but you're welcome to draw on the side, sketch them out, do little notations, or try it in a sketchbook and see if the form sort of follows through. If it doesn't follow through, just go the other direction, and then you got it. All right. So yeah, that's it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed this series on basically cross contour. In the future, we'll go over another drawing technique called cage volume. Until then, see you soon. Cheers.